This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
Section 1. Hook. I had $340,000 in business debt, and every single morning for 3 years, I kissed my wife goodbye, told her things were great, and drove to a business that was quietly drowning us both. Section 2. Reality. My name is Gary Malone. I was 51 years old. I had a small commercial printing company in Columbus, Ohio. 15 employees, 2 delivery trucks, and a lease on a 4,000 square foot shop that I signed in what felt like the best year of my life. For a while, it was the best year of my life. 2018. We were pulling in $800,000 a year in revenue. I was taking home a $120,000 salary. My wife Diane had quit her nursing job to help manage the books. And I told her not to worry, I'd handle the business finances myself. That was my first mistake. But by 2020, COVID hit the commercial print industry like a freight train. Corporate clients canceled contracts overnight. 2 of our biggest accounts, combined $300,000 a year in business, went remote and stopped printing entirely. Just like that. I thought it was temporary. I kept paying all 15 salaries. I kept paying the lease. I figured we'd bounce back in 6 months. We didn't. So I started filling the gaps the only way I knew how, borrowing. Business line of credit, $85,000, maxed within 8 months. 3 business credit cards, $62,000 combined, running at 24% interest. Small business equipment loan I'd taken out in 2019 for a new digital press, $48,000 still owed. A personal loan I took against our home equity to cover payroll, $55,000. And then, the one that kept me up at night, IRS debt. I had stopped making quarterly tax payments for the business, just stopped. Told myself I'd catch up. By the time the IRS sent the first serious notice, I owed $41,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest. IRS debt doesn't go away, it grows, and the IRS has collection tools that would make any collection agency look polite. That was $291,000 just in business debt. On the personal side, Diane didn't know I'd also run up $27,000 on 2 personal credit cards trying to cover the months the business couldn't pay me back. We still had a mortgage, $187,000 left on the house, 2 car payments, $680 a month combined. All in? When I finally sat down and wrote every number on a single page, something I had avoided doing for almost 3 years, the total was $340,400. I stared at that number for a long time. It didn't feel real. It felt like a sentence. Section 3. Emotional crisis. The call started in early 2021. First, it was the business credit card companies. Polite at first, then firm. Then a collection agency picked up one of the accounts and the calls became something else entirely. My cell phone rang at 7:58 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen with Diane and the kids. I looked at the number, unknown, and let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. I walked outside into the cold and I answered it. The woman on the other end read me a balance I already knew by heart. She told me they were prepared to move forward with legal action. She used the word judgment. She used the word garnishment. And I stood there in my driveway in a t-shirt in February, nodding like she could see me, saying, yes, I understand. Because I didn't know what else to say. I was getting 4 to 7 collection calls a day at peak. I stopped answering my phone entirely. I started letting everything go to voicemail, and then I stopped listening to the voicemails. I had 200 unheard messages by March. The mail was worse. Because Diane checked the mail, I started getting to the mailbox first. Every day, I was like a man defusing a bomb in slow motion, pulling out the business envelopes, the IRS notices, the bank letters, and sliding them into my briefcase before she could see. I had a small lockbox in my car. I kept the worst ones in there. At night, I couldn't sleep. I mean that literally. There were stretches of 3, 4, 5 days where I slept maybe 2 hours total. I would lie next to Diane, listening to her breathe, and I would do the math in my head over and over. Could I cut 2 more employees? Could I get a new client by Friday? Could I sell the press? I lost 22 pounds in 4 months. Diane thought I was on a diet. She was proud of me. One night, my youngest daughter, Maya, she was 14, came downstairs at 2 a.m. and found me sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop and a yellow legal pad covered in numbers. She sat down across from me and said, "Dad, are you okay?" I told her I was just working late. She said, "You always look scared now." I got up, hugged her, and told her everything was fine. Then I went into the bathroom and I cried for the first time in probably 20 years. Not because of the debt, because my 14-year-old could see what I was hiding from my wife. That's when the shame really set in. Not fear, shame. The feeling that I had built something that looked like success for 15 years and it had all been made of paper, and I had been too proud, too stubborn, too scared to tell the one person who should have been my partner through all of it. The business received a foreclosure notice on its equipment lease in April. The landlord sent a formal notice of default, and I came home that night, sat down at dinner with Diane and Maya and our son Tyler, and I passed the mashed potatoes and asked Tyler about his baseball game. I don't know how I did it. I genuinely don't. Section 4. Wrong choices. Here's what I did instead of asking for help. First, I took out 2 payday loans. I know. I borrowed $2,500 and $1,000 from 2 different payday lenders to cover a payroll gap. Those loans carried effective annual interest rates over 300%. I paid them back within 3 weeks. Barely. But the fees alone cost me $380. For 3 weeks. That's not a loan. That's a trap with a friendly storefront. Second, I did 4 balance transfers across my personal credit cards. I kept moving debt around, chasing 0% promotional periods, the kind that flip to 26% APR if you miss a single payment. I missed a payment twice. My credit score, which had been 720 when this all started, dropped to 581 by the summer of 2021. A 581 FICO score means you can't get a decent rate on anything. It means banks look at you differently. It means the doors that were open start closing. Third, and this is the one I'm most ashamed of, I raided my 401k. I took an early withdrawal of $34,000. After the 10% early withdrawal penalty and taxes, I actually received about $22,000. I burned $12,000 in penalties and taxes to access my own retirement savings. That money went directly into the business and was gone within 90 days. My retirement account, which had taken me 20 years to build to $180,000, was now down to $146,000, and I had a tax bill coming for the withdrawal on top of everything else. I also ignored certified mail from the IRS for 60 days. When you ignore IRS notices, they don't stop. They escalate. The IRS can levy bank accounts, garnish wages, and file federal tax liens against your property. A federal tax lien becomes part of the public record, and it devastates your ability to refinance, sell assets, or borrow. I didn't know all of that clearly enough until it was almost too late. And I kept lying to Diane. Every week. Business is picking up. I've got a new client coming in. We're going to be fine by fall. She believed me because she loved me. And that made it worse every single time. Section 5. Turning Point. It was a Wednesday night in late October 2021. Diane had gone to bed early. I was sitting in the living room with the lockbox open on the coffee table. Every letter, every notice, every past due statement laid out in front of me. I don't know why I finally took it out of the car. Maybe I was just tired of carrying it. I sat there and I read every single piece of mail I had been hiding. All of it. For the first time, I let myself actually read the words instead of folding them back up and pretending they weren't real. And in the middle of all of it was a small card. It had come with one of the IRS notices, a reference to a nonprofit credit counseling service. I'd ignored it for months. But that night I typed the name into my phone. The next morning, I called a nonprofit credit counseling agency, a NFCC member organization. The woman I spoke to didn't judge me. She just asked me questions and listened. She helped me understand that I wasn't the first person to be sitting exactly where I was sitting. She explained my options in a way that finally made sense. She talked about debt consolidation, combining multiple debts into a single monthly payment, sometimes at a lower interest rate. She was honest that with my credit score, my options there were limited, but it was worth exploring. She told me to consult with a bankruptcy attorney. Not because bankruptcy was the only answer, but because I needed to understand whether Chapter 7 bankruptcy or Chapter 13 bankruptcy might apply to my situation. Chapter 7 is a liquidation bankruptcy. It can discharge many unsecured debts, but involves giving up certain non-exempt assets. Chapter 13 is a reorganization. You keep your assets and repay debts over a 3 to 5 year structured plan. For a business owner with a home and retirement savings at stake, the difference matters enormously. Only a licensed bankruptcy attorney could tell me which path made sense for my specific situation. She also explained debt settlement, where you negotiate with creditors to pay less than you owe. She was honest about the risks. It damages your credit score significantly, there can be tax consequences on forgiven debt, and not all creditors will negotiate. She said never to pay a for-profit debt settlement company upfront fees without consulting a professional first. And she said something I needed to hear. The worst thing you can do right now is nothing. That night, I sat Diane down at the kitchen table. I put the lockbox in front of her, and I told her everything. She didn't yell, she didn't leave, she cried, I cried, and then she said, "Okay, what do we do next?" I had been terrified of that conversation for 3 years, and it took 11 minutes. Section 6. Educational info. I want to stop here for a second, because if you're watching this and any part of Gary's story sounds familiar, there are things you need to know. Chapter 7. Bankruptcy can eliminate many types of unsecured debt, credit cards, medical bills, personal loans, relatively quickly. But it stays on your credit report for 10 years, and there are eligibility requirements. Chapter 13. Bankruptcy lets you restructure and repay debt over time while protecting assets like your home from foreclosure. It stays on your credit report for 7 years. Debt consolidation can simplify payments and potentially lower interest, but it works best when your credit score is still in decent shape. And it doesn't reduce what you owe. Credit counseling through a nonprofit, especially NFCC-affiliated agencies, can help you build a debt management plan and negotiate with creditors without the risks of for-profit debt settlement companies. IRS debt is in a category of its own. There are IRS programs, installment agreements, offer in compromise, but navigating them without a tax professional is extremely risky. And your FICO score, your credit score, matters for every financial decision going forward. Understanding what's on your credit report right now is the first free step you can take today. Please consult a licensed professional before making any decisions about bankruptcy, debt settlement, or IRS negotiations. Every situation is different. What worked for Gary may not be the right path for you. Section 7. Resolution. Gary closed the business in November 2021. 15 employees, people he'd worked with for years, had to be let go. That was one of the hardest days of his life. He said letting those people go hurt more than any dollar amount. With his bankruptcy attorney, Gary filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. It wasn't a magic wand. It was a structured plan, a commitment to a court-supervised repayment schedule over 5 years. It stopped the collection calls. It stopped the IRS levy that had been in progress. It gave him and Diane a framework. His credit score didn't recover overnight. It took time. It's still not where it was. But 581 became 620 within the first year of the plan. Not great, but moving. He got a job as a production manager at a larger print company. Ironic, he said. But he knew the industry. He knew the equipment. And he showed up every day grateful to have a paycheck that wasn't attached to a business that was bleeding. Diane went back to nursing. They sold one of the cars. They cut every expense that wasn't essential. A year into the plan, Maya asked him how things were going. He sat down with her and he told her the truth. He told her what happened, what mistakes he made, and what they were doing to fix it. She said, "You don't look scared anymore, Dad." He wasn't fixed. He wasn't debt-free. He had 4 more years on his repayment plan. But he wasn't alone. He wasn't hiding, and for the first time in 3 years, he could sleep. If you are carrying a secret right now, a number you haven't shown anyone, I want you to know that the number on that page is not the final word on your life. The call you're afraid to make is the one that changes everything. You don't have to have the answer. You just have to make the call. Section 8, CTA. Download the free debt recovery checklist linked in the description below.